Today, we are literally going to get into some dirty laundry. I know that I believe at this point, Gabby Petito's name is pretty much a household name at this point. A lot of people have already made videos about this. Those who are not making videos about it, the news is literally reporting on this 24/7. With that being said, there's a lot of things that I need to cover in this video, so it will be a little bit lengthy. Also, if you're very sensitive or you easily get offended, this may not be the video for you. However, I do want to get started off with Brian Laundrie. That's why I say the dirty laundries, because these people are disgusting. They are dirty. I want to get started with them and how they seem to be just maneuvering around. And even though a lot of times people don't want to speak about race, they don't want to talk about race, but the fact of the matter is, if this was a couple, a Black couple, they would have already been arrested. They would have charged them with whatever they could charge them with, because it is clear that this mother and father has helped their son evade the police. Now, when you have children, of course, every parent should love their children unconditionally. But the fact of the matter is, Gabby is somebody's daughter. And Chris and Roberta, they knew that Gabby was down in the dirt, dead. While they have played games with the police, they have sent the police on wild goose chases, yet is still the police have given them privileges like still living in their house, coming and going back and forth. I know I have a friend and somebody shot at his car. And although he didn't really have anything to do with it, he was a victim, his vehicle was still taken away for investigation. So the fact that, in my personal opinion, this house should be seen as a crime scene, those cars should be seen as a crime scene, everything should be a crime scene, and the parents should not be allowed to live in that house where they could be getting rid of evidence, which I'm quite sure they're doing. Because in my opinion, I believe that they gave their son money, probably valuables, survival tools, and whatever he needs to be on the run. And they're just sitting back, well, we have nothing to say, speak to my lawyer. Fuck your lawyer, okay? Your lawyer has no conscience, because if this was his daughter, he would want to have answers. He wouldn't be, oh, we have no comment. At the end of the day, in my personal opinion, Chris and Roberta, they're very comfortable because they know that their son is alive. They may be slightly nervous because, well, what if he messes up somewhere, and gets caught up or whatever. But at the end of the day, they already knew what was going on long before they ever reported him missing. When he came back and Gabby was not with him, they knew what time it was. However, we see them coming and going, doing what they want to do. It reminds me of the boy who shot up the church and the police went and took him to Burger King to get burgers and stuff like that. So what did the police, they're camped out across the street? So what did they're so-called keeping an eye out on them? How well have they been keeping their eye out when they have no idea where Brian is? Although they're going in swamps and lakes and stuff like that, looking for him. When it comes to children and even adults that are missing, there's always an issue when it comes down to race. It just is. These are facts, okay? And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't matter if a person is Black, white. It shouldn't matter their social status, gender, sexual orientation. None of that should matter. Everybody should be treated equally. Did Gabby get too much media coverage? Is she getting too much media coverage? Absolutely not. Because if it was my daughter, I would want that same amount of media coverage. The only thing that I'm asking is that the same media attention that Gabby gets, give that same attention to every single person, Black and white, period. That's the part that rubs me the wrong way. There are so many missing people and they don't get this coverage. But that doesn't take away, again, I'm not being insensitive with Gabby's situation. I have been following this story. I've been hooked on this story just like everybody else. And in all fairness, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like the reason why a lot of people, even like myself, felt emotionally attached to this situation was because, call it what you want to, I'm a YouTuber. We're all here on social media. So I feel like people who are on social media felt a even more connection with her versus someone else that's not kind of in this field. You know what I mean? So if you're on TikTok or you're on Instagram or you're making videos, somehow you feel like this person is a part of your community. So you have that extra connection there. So again, I feel like that's also played a huge part into why her case blew up beyond the fact that she's a white, female. She was also on social media. And right now, especially in this pandemic, social media is everything. We're living, breathing, eating, doing everything here on social media. Now, with that being said, like I said, because the whole key is this: 2 young lives are gone too soon. But can we please have the conversation as to why Jelani Day didn't have the same media coverage as Gabby Petito? And that is absolutely correct. And that is why I am making this video here and also calling myself to the carpet, because if we can make videos about mess and drama and all this other kind of stuff, we can bring balance and talk about situations like this that matters. We can highlight, missing African Americans. Because if I made a video right now and I was cussing out some rapper or entertainer or fellow content creator, I would get thousands and thousands of views because I've already done that before. You know what I mean? I have viral videos because I wanted to give Raven-Symoné a piece of my mind. So if we could just use these platforms and utilize them for situations like this, because think about these parents who don't have this social media platform. Now, I want to get into the long history of how whites are treated different when it comes to them being missing.
The convention in 2004, legendary journalist 𝐉𝐞𝐥𝐚𝐲 coined the phrase missing white woman syndrome, saying this:
I call it the missing white woman syndrome. If there's a missing white woman, we're going to cover that every day.
A young white woman goes missing, and America snaps to attention. Media coverage ramps up, stories are hurriedly written, and video profiles begin to dominate the airwaves. In response to the heightened awareness, resources are brought to bear, and an intensive search begins, all in the hope of finding some sort of closure, not just for the loved ones of the missing, but for all of us who are now invested in her well-being. It's a reality that we're all very familiar with, so familiar that it's become a trope, a punchline used in movies, sitcoms, and stand-up routines. Gwen herself was laughing as she said it, the kind of laugh that one uses to mask exasperation or pain. It's a reality that we watch play out in response to the disappearance of Gabby Petito, whose body has now been recovered. While I'm saddened for her family, I'm relieved they have some closure, and I hope they find peace. And I certainly hope that justice finds her killer. My point today is not about her, though. It's about worth, the weight we assign to different members of our society and the value gap that exists because of it. Simply put, young white women hold more value than others, and our attentions reflect this.
That's the point that I'm making there, and it should not be like that. I appreciate that these conversations are actually now happening, and I feel like instead of, criticizing and saying this person could do more of this and this person could do that, we all have our part to play. Now, I want to play this clip real quick.
2-year-old Gabby Petito's death has now ignited new interest in finding other missing persons. Her disappearance has actually mobilized people online hunting for clues to focus on other unsolved cases, including those of minorities that don't necessarily garner as much national attention. TJ Holmes has more for us.
Her story has dominated news headlines and mobilized a legion of social media users. Hashtag Find Gabby Petito gaining over 700 million views on TikTok.
I'm hoping this can help someone identify him.
Many of them now internet sleuths, exchanging theories as well as sharing info about possible sightings and clues.
Psychologically, people just felt very close to her because of social media.
But here's the despairing truth. Gabby Petito is one of so many reported missing each year. At the end of 2020, the FBI had over 89,000 active missing persons cases. 45% of those cases, people of color. Petito's story has renewed debate about which cases get attention and the media's seeming infatuation with missing white women. But her case also sparked a call to action to bring others home, like Daniel Robinson.
Okay, so we are going to get into some other people who are missing, but right now I want to get into this next young man that was missing, and recently they have, which when you hear the story, it gets even more crazy because they had already found the body, but what the mother had to go through just to get these answers. So I'm going to put that video up. I will be pausing in between to give my commentary, and also because I don't want to get this video snatched down from YouTube. This is not going to be a monetized video. If you see any ads running in this video, it's because there's other people's content within this video, but I feel like this is important and it needs to get put out there. So let me go ahead and get started.
First and foremost, it had to be aggravating and frustrating to watch networks send reporters to Denver, to Florida, to New York, to all over America, covering the case of this missing white woman whose body was found. And I'm not diminishing at all that story, but the resources that was put into that. And you and others were going, hey, can someone explain to me what happened to my son?
I don't even think the word is frustrating. It was disrespectful because it was showing me that the media, the police, the FBI, they thought that this young white girl was more important than my young black son. And I was mad, I was angry, because the same focus and the same attention that I had been asking for and pleading for and begging for, I couldn't receive.
Your son was seen coming out of a dispensary And then that was it. When were you notified that he was missing? What did the cops do? Was there a real investigation? Was there an actual search for him?
I found out he was missing on Wednesday evening, which would have been the 25th. My son, my oldest son, had called me and said, "Mom, the police are here and they're looking for Jelani." And I was like, "Looking for Jelani for what?" He said, "The police want to know, have you talked to Jelani?" I was like, "Yeah, I just talked to Jelani." On that particular day, I thought I had talked to Jelani on that Tuesday. But as I scrolled through my phone, I realized I hadn't spoken to Jelani since Monday. And I guess the reason I thought I had spoken to Jelani on Tuesday, because on Monday, Jelani had called me so much that I thought I had talked to him on Tuesday. So Wednesday, when I got off of work and DeAndre called me and told me that the police were looking for Jelani, I immediately hung up from DeAndre and I was calling Jelani's phone. Well, his phone went straight to voicemail, which at first didn't alarm me because Jelani's been known to put his phone on Do Not Disturb. But when he does that, I fussed at him so much that Jelani calls me right back just like that. Well, on this day, I didn't get a call back. So I texted him and I was like, "Call me ASAP." And I did not hear anything from him. So then my oldest son said, "My mama go to Bloomington." Well, the police had came to my home, which is in Danville, Illinois, and I was 2 hours away. So DeAndre drove to Bloomington. In the meantime, I got more insight and information as to how or who came up with the fact that Jelani was missing. So it was this professor who had called. So I got her number.
Now I'm just going to pause for a second, because with this professor, in my personal opinion, they need to lean hard on this professor and ask some more questions, because I feel like something within this professor doesn't sit right with me. And I think accountability needs to come into play when it comes to that professor. So I just wanted to add that in there. If you guys are following this story and you feel like I'm onto something there, let me know. If you feel like, no, professor don't have nothing to do with anything, then, feel free to put that down in the comment section. But I'm curious on what you think on this situation.
And I called her. So after listening to her tell me that she has been texting with Jelani all Monday evening, about a little bit after 9, her and Jelani had been texting. They had been talking about some school stuff. And Jelani was supposed to meet with her that Tuesday because she said there was something that he had to get done for me. She said that he didn't show up on Tuesday. Then he didn't show up for his class on Wednesday. So she became worried and she called the Red and White, I guess it's some group on campus that checks on the students if you don't see them, at 1 o'clock that afternoon. And by 5 p.m., she hadn't heard from them. So she went to her chair and her chair contacted this group. And then the group told her that they had 24 hours to go look for Jelani. So instead of waiting the 24 hours, she said she contacted the police to do a wellness check on Jelani. So being that Jelani didn't list the apartment that we had purchased for him as his home address, the police ended up coming to my home in Danville because that was listed as his home address, which I'm grateful for because that gave me an alert that my child was missing. The police didn't let me know. I spoke to her. Then I spoke to this young girl, another white girl that was in Jelani's class that was upset, and she had contacted one of my daughter's friends and said that she hadn't heard from Jelani. So I contacted the young lady, wanted to know what her and Jelani relationship was, when was the last time she talked to him. My son by this time had gotten to Bloomington, went to Jelani's apartment. There was no sign of Jelani. I called the police officer back, told him to meet my son there. I ended up filing a missing persons report that night. The next morning, I got up early in the morning and checked the bank to see if Jelani's card had been swiped, and that's when I found out his card had purchased something at the Starbucks on Tuesday. I started doing my research then. I left Belleville, Illinois, and we went to Bloomington. I went to the Starbucks. I went to the school. I ended up speaking to the teacher in person, who then let me know. I found out that Jelani had actually been on the campus that Tuesday morning. At 6:50, he had logged into the computers on campus, put in some notes because he had clinicals that day, and he had 2 patients that he needed to see. However, he didn't show up for clinicals or the patient. I also found out that at that point, that's all I knew at that point, that he had been to Starbucks, and I knew he had been there since 7 something in the morning. Moving forward, I later learned that the last ping on his phone was at 9:20. The detective that was then assigned to the case, let me back up because let's get to the part where how I got the detective. I called the professor because when I called the school to ask them if they had cameras, if they had seen my son, they kind of blew me off. It was like, okay, we'll get to it. So I called her because I'm like, okay, this is a faculty member and maybe she can make some progress for me. So I had her check and see if we can get the cameras to look. When she called me back, she told me that the cameras had already been retrieved by the police. And that kind of puzzled me. I was like, what? Because I just reported him missing. I hadn't even told anyone that he had been to Starbucks. So how had they had the cameras from Starbucks? But I listened.
Again, this is why I say the professor, they need to press on that professor some more. And also they need to talk with the police that the professor had contacted, who she made contact with, because just like his mother said, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I just want to add this too, having children, and all my children are grown, sometimes your kids, as the old people say, they start smelling themselves or they feel like they're grown and you can't tell them anything and they can do what they want to do. But sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, it's very important that regardless if your kids are grown or not, that you stay in communication with them all the time. And where if you don't hear from them in 1 or 2 days, that's abnormal, and that it's time to sound the alarm. Now I know with my daughter, especially because she's a girl, even once she moved out of my house and stuff like that, I made sure that she kept everything with my address. So therefore, if anything happened, it would come right back to me. So I know I would be notified right away. A lot of times, when it comes down to stuff, you're like, well, my kids are grown. They can get their own cell phone. They need to have responsibilities. That's good and that's great. But sometimes having them on that same phone bill can be beneficial, because then you can access certain things where if they're not, the first thing they're going to tell you is that your children are grown and you got to wait through to get all of these court orders and stuff like that. However, if you're on that same plan, you can go in the email and check certain things, making sure that you tell your children to keep their their location on. Sometimes you feel like, well, I don't want people in my business. I want to take my notifications off. But think about how many situations people have been saved because they had those notifications on. They were able to at least find proximity to where the person was or could be, or to see what was going on. Even when it comes down to my bank accounts, my daughter's on every single bank account I have. She's on my stuff. She can access that. So if anything is to happen, number one, she can access my money. Let's get started with that. But number two, she can also go to the bank and see what type of transactions took place right away. There's no need to wait on, the police and to get the court order and that type of stuff. And no, you shouldn't have to walk around every day thinking that something awful is going to happen. But that's the reality of the world that we live in. Shit is always happening. So it's better to be prepared and nothing happens than to be unprepared. And then you don't even know where to start. You have nothing to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and play some more of this video.
Listen to her. And then she said that she knew somebody in the police department that was had some higher up authority, and they were going to get a detective on the case. And that is how I got a detective that day from her helping me. Got a detective that day. I spoke with the detective. I gave him everything that I knew. That's when we found out Jelani's last ping on his phone was at Veterans Parkway. The detective figured out that his ping, there were businesses in that area, and that's how we found out he was at Beyond Hello. Then they retrieved the video of him leaving Beyond Hello, and I see that he had on shirts and a shorts, which means he had changed his clothes from when he was at Starbucks that morning, because that morning when I seen him, he had on his dress shirt and dress slacks and dress shoes as if he was prepared for school to go on to his interviews or his clinicals. Now I'm thinking, what deterred my son from taking care of his business? Because it had to be something. Somebody had to call him. He figured that he had to do something. So we requested video from campus. Initially, they just gave me the video footage of him being at Starbucks. After speaking with the detective and him checking with the school, they later monitor Jelani's swiping of his card and his movements around campus. We then obtained video. Jelani was actually on campus walking around. It looked like he was waiting for somebody or looking for somebody, and finally found out that he was waiting for the health center to open, because one of the things that he was supposed to meet this professor about that day was there was 2 parts that he needed to be done. He needed to get a TB test, and he had only completed 1 part of it. So he was getting that stuff done, and I'm assuming that when he went there, because nobody can remember speaking to him, but you do see him on the video, that they couldn't get in because it was by appointment only.
Well, I'm still trying to understand this, and this is why I'm just totally confused here. He comes up missing. Mm-hmm. Do they trace his steps? First of all, do they initiate a search? What actually happened to try to find him?
His mom, they discovered his car on the 25th, which was that Thursday evening.
And they discovered his car where?
In Peru, Illinois. His car was discovered in a wooded area in Peru, Illinois.
And how far is Peru, Illinois from Bloomington?
60 miles from Bloomington.
60 miles. So he was last seen in Bloomington, and we have a map up right now. His wallet was found where was his car found the same place where his wallet was found?
Not that I understand, no.
And then his body is found in the Illinois River. Do you believe foul play was involved in the death of your son, and have they determined the cause of death?
I definitely believe that foul play was involved. And no, they have not. The cause of his death is unknown at this time. They're trying to create the narrative that Jelani had mental issues and he was depressed, but the devil is a lie. There was nothing wrong with my son. He was not depressed about anything. He was not overwhelmed about anything.
That's another problem right there. If they can't put out the narrative that you're drug addicted or you're selling drugs or something like that, then next you have to be mentally ill and not within your right sound mind. Number one, let me just get to a picture of this young man, because he was he was smart, very well on his way, a lot to look forward to. So to try to spin that narrative and make it seem like, oh, he must have been depressed. He tried to take his life. His father, he was a bone marrow donor for his father. Everything was going his way. He was very popular at school. That's what all the students said. Everybody loved him. Everybody knew him. But now suddenly he's suicidal. That's not everybody's story.
He had been in a program that was challenging. He went to an HBCU where he kept his GPA up to 3.3, 3.4 and higher while he pledged online, while he was in a group on house arrest. He pledged for them. He was a collegiate honor student. He did all of that, plus he partied. And I would get on him. I'd be like, Jelani, your grades better be good. And nothing ever failed with him. He kept all up. So he knew pressure and he could handle pressure. So them trying to convey this or want him to make me think that my son, because his dad is ill, because things were going on in school and it was a challenging program, that he was under pressure, is a lie. Jelani could handle all of that. He had been handling, he's handled many things. And so the fact that he's in Peru, which is a town that only comprises of 1% of Black people, that he's never been there before. I've never heard of it until they found his car there. Then they want me to think that he actually took his car, parked it in this wooded area that you would only know about this area if you are from there, that you have been there or you lived and grown up there, because one of those areas where you just don't find by going down the street. It's tucked away. So he didn't park his car there. Then they want me to believe that he parked his car there and he walked his little happy self to this riverbank, took off his shoes and socks and his shorts, and put himself in the water and drowned himself. Number one, my son was on the swim team and he could swim. So none of it makes sense to me. And I'm not going to let them create a narrative that makes anyone think that my son had any kind of mental health issues, that he was not a strong young man. My son is smart. He was determined. He was goal-driven. He had things in his life that he wanted to accomplish, and somebody stole all of this from him. I don't know if they thought he had money because of the car he drove, or because of how well kept he was, or because of the way he kept himself up. But
and the key to that is knowing your children. You know, knowing that she knows that her son was focused and he wasn't out there in that street life and doing all other kind of crazy stuff. She knows her son wasn't depressed. She knows he had goals and he had things that he wanted to achieve. So at this point, she's going to need justice for her son, and the community is still going to need to back her so she can get that support and not just brush this off as a suicide and not want to look any deeper into it. And the fact that the area that he was in was only 1% Black people, I mean, I hate to say it, but how much more clear, I mean, can we be that this is foul play? It's definitely foul play. Now, I want to go to the clip I was playing earlier with some of the other missing children, just because there's a lot of this going on and it's not getting any coverage. So I want to show some of that.
24-year-old geologist who went missing in the desert outside Buckeye, Arizona in late June. His Jeep was found mangled July 19th, about 4 miles from where he was last seen. The Buckeye Police Department says in a statement, investigators are utilizing every resource possible to locate him, including assistance from partner agencies and information provided by the public. His family has also organized searches in the desert heat.
I thank God for all the volunteers who left their houses every morning, in the mornings, and spend out time out there in the desert.
There's also Maya Miliete and Jelani Day. Miliete, a mother of 3, has been missing for over 9 months. The 39-year-old was last seen at her family home in Chula Vista, California. Day, a 25-year-old graduate student at Illinois State University, was last seen August 24th in Bloomington, Illinois. His car was discovered 2 days later, but no signs of Day.
Jelani is, he's a sweetheart. I shouldn't have to beg. I shouldn't have to plead. I shouldn't have to feel that there is a racial disparity. I shouldn't have to feel any of that. I want these people that have these resources to realize this could happen to them.
That go into a decision to put a story in the headlines, to include it in a newscast. And look, the Petito story absolutely did go viral for a lot of reasons, and you have to admit there was so much video, frankly, of her. She said such an online presence that part of the story certainly was a part of it becoming viral. And people who are criticizing media coverage are not trying to take away from the newsworthiness of her story or take anything away from the Petito family. They just want to argue as well, Kira, that there are so many other families out there still waiting for word and also waiting for the same kind of attention possibly to their stories for their loved ones as well.
TJ, thanks so much. We're going to continue this conversation. You may remember the late PBS anchor Gwen Ifill famously dubbed it missing white woman syndrome, the historic tendency for national attention to just gloss over cases of missing people of color. Joining us to discuss, op-ed columnist Elsie Granderson, also associate professor at Brandeis University, Leah Wright-Rigueur, both ABC News contributors. Leah, let's start with you. And you know, TJ points out in his piece that 45% of active missing persons cases are people of color. Let's start there. Why?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons for this. Mainly one of the things that we see is that in these cases, the individuals who are, who go unnoticed by the system are often poor or working class Black women who get overlooked. And they're overlooked for a number of reasons. One, there is an inability, I think, by larger populations to empathize with the situation or the experience of these often missing young Black people, particularly Black women. But there's also an emphasis from institutions and structures surrounding this that places kind of the emphasis on personal responsibility. So if a Black girl goes missing, it's not about us engaging in public safety or, surrounding institutions being on the lookout for this. Instead, the assumption is that she must be missing because she ran away. She's missing because of her own fault, right? It's her own fault that she's on the run. So we don't have the same kind of empathy. We don't offer the same kind of treatment for these individuals, and we certainly don't offer the same kind of attention and care that we offer to other populations.
And LZ, picking up on that, according to the Black and Missing Foundation, the fact that there's a foundation, it's called the Black and Missing Foundation, speaks volumes about where we are in this. They say that when minority children are reported missing, the cases are often treated as runaways. So let's talk about power in law enforcement and media. How is that distorted here? What do you see in the way law enforcement addresses cases when children of color and adults of color are missing, and the media as well?
Well, there are a lot of things at play in terms of how this is being processed. But I think the first and foremost is that if you just think historically about the way that people of color have been written about, portrayed, reported, it's a pretty clear narrative that has been set over the decades where you're either a criminal or somehow, as your guest was just mentioning, there's a failure in personal responsibility. In other words, it's not the system or it's not some outside influence that has led you to predicament that you're in, but it's a failure on your own.
And listen, they can say what they want to say about our people, and I'm not taking the lady with the yellow glasses too fucking serious, because the yellow glasses just threw me the fuck off, and she dancing around the motherfucking bullshit, okay? But at the end of the day, and I'm not trying to make Gabby's parents feel bad, but her parents waited 2 weeks before they reported their daughter missing. Your daughter traveling across the world with this man clearly was abusive. That wasn't the first time he punched her and hit her and did whatever else was going on. I mean, I still wonder in the back of my head, why the hell did Gabby feel like she had to get away? Why did she have to move across the country from her family? Well, of course, a lot of abusers, I told you guys before, that's what they do. They want to isolate you from those who love you so that they can have control of you, so they can continue to abuse, right? But Gabby's parents waited 2 weeks after not hearing from her, after this man playing games on the phone, pretending to be her, talking about the grandfather by his first name and all that mumbo jumbo before they put in a police report. This lady went 1 to 2 days before she didn't hear from her son, and she rang the alarm and was out on the ground getting things done and still trying to get things done and get justice for her son. So let's get back to her, because all of this other stuff about, yes, I know a lot of times they do feel like, oh, either they're running away from something, and God forbid they go look it up and see that the man might have a child support case. They think that he's on a run over child support, or if it's the woman, she's running from whatever. It might be some criminal charge, or whatever the case may be. It's still bullshit, because missing is missing, and we're all fucking humans. So everybody should be treated equally and get that same amount of attention, publicity, support. And then you got Dog, the bounty hunter. He was out here looking for Gabby even before the reward had reached $80,000. Now he says, oh, it's really on. Well, I expect you to be doing just what you're doing, because number one, you're a clout chaser. You like being in the media attention. Let's just get started with that. And let's not sit up here and act like we don't remember the fact that he is a fucking racist. Okay. So I don't expect the likes of him to be out here concerned about anybody else's missing children other than somebody of his own color. Get into that.
Somebody did this to him because Jelani didn't just drive himself to Peru. He didn't just put himself in a river. He didn't just drop his wallet in somebody's yard. He didn't just leave his lanyard laying on the ground. He didn't do none of that to himself. Somebody did it, and they didn't do nothing to try to find it out. That car was found on the 26th, which was a Thursday. By that Saturday, I conducted my own search, gathered people, had them in Peru. There was not one police officer there to help us, to guide us, to lead us, to show us anything. I even posted on social media.
Now, people get mad when I talk about the police, but of course the police wasn't there to look for him. The only time the police are there to look for us is when they want to shoot us in the motherfucking back. That's the only time the police are going to show up to look for us. When they need to do target practice, they're not showing up when your kids are missing. They're not showing up when you're missing. They're not going to go the extra mile like I've been seeing these police officers do. Even though they dropped the ball when they pulled them over, she was crying and the people had already reported they got into a fight. They should have never been separated. Those police officers, I can only imagine the guilt that they must live with every day, thinking, what if we would have did this? What if we would have did that? Maybe she would still be living. But again, that wasn't his first time abusing her, I'm quite sure. So even if they would have locked him up, chances are she would have probably ran right back to him. You see, she was making excuses for him. That's just a part of that vicious cycle of abuse. And that's also another topic on this whole thing that has to be discussed. It needs to be talked about. Maybe not in this video, but on another one. But at the end of the day, there's no sense of anybody getting on camera or getting on TV and pity-patting around it, you know what I'm saying, and ducking and dodging. At the end of the day, if I call the police right now because one of my children are missing, especially an adult child, those police don't give a fuck. Why? Simply because I'm Black. Second, I'm not famous. I'm not rich. So again, like I said, you have classism and all that other kind of stuff, and it's wrong. It's wrong.
I don't know how to conduct a search, but I know I have to search. And whoever can help me, please join me in searching for my son. And people showed up. I did the search the next day in Bloomington, near his apartment, because my kids was like, Mama, let's search this area. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to search. Nobody was telling us anything. So I had to make moves on my own. I had to figure out things. My kids have been on computers trying to figure out things. We tried to get into his phone. His location turned off. Apple wouldn't help us, so we created a protest against Apple, had everybody tagging them until we could get some help. The police were telling me that they had to get a subpoena against Apple, and it would take sometimes it takes 6 months for Apple to respond. Not with this one, it wasn't going to take 6 months. I found Apple's policy. I texted to the detective. I gave him a number. I had people calling, just bombarding Apple with phone numbers. One of my friends found out that he sat on a board with somebody from Apple, and he contacted them for me. By that night at midnight, Apple had at least responded with some kind of spreadsheet, according to Detective Jones, with some information. That wasn't because they did anything. That was all because of the groundwork and the legwork that me and my friends and strangers put in for my son. after the Apple stuff, we had to still look for things. We're looking for clues. I had to hire a private investigator. I had to call Illinois Search and Rescue so that they can get involved, so that they can perform a search. And it was them that, when that search that they conducted, that found this body that they couldn't identify. That wasn't Peru. That wasn't Bloomington. That was me and my kids and my friends and people I didn't even know that were concerned about how I felt about my son. So we find this unidentified body on September 4th. They sit me in a room. They explain to me that they can't tell me anything because the decomposition of the body, and we would have to do DNA.
So you're saying you're saying his body was found September 4th?
September 4th.
It was found September 4th, and it wasn't until yesterday that they identified that that was indeed him.
It wasn't until yesterday.
So,
and the only reason that I feel like that happened on yesterday was because of all this pressure that I've put on them. Because I've talked about how inept the police have been. I've talked about how they have not provided me any kind of information. I've talked about how they haven't helped me in any kind of way. So I didn't want them anymore to help me do anything. I need the FBI. I needed the same coverage that when I woke up one morning, I saw this white girl plastered everywhere. I saw everybody talking about her. I saw her all on social media, and her parents said they hadn't talked to her in 2 weeks before they reported her missing. I hadn't talked to my son in 1 day before I reported him missing, and I didn't get nothing. Not.
Oh, no, we're going to back that up just a minute. We're going to back that up again. We're going to listen to that one more again. And I'm not shaming the parents. I'm just saying this lady been out here. Like, one thing when it comes to Black women, when it comes down to their children, they will do whatever they have to do by any means necessary when it comes to their children. And you just listen again, the difference.
They haven't helped me in any kind of way. So I didn't want them anymore to help me do anything. I need the FBI. I needed the same coverage that when I woke up one morning, I saw this white girl plastered everywhere. I saw everybody talking about her. I saw her all on social media, and her parents said they hadn't talked to her in 2 weeks before they reported her missing. I hadn't talked to my son in 1 day before I reported him missing, and I didn't get nothing. Nothing. But she had the FBI, and they had people looking for her everywhere. And I sat there, and do not get me wrong, Gabby, my heart goes out to her parents, because I know what it feels like to not know where your child is, to want to know where they is, to want to make sure they safe. I know what that feels like. I was sitting in that seat with her, but I didn't know what it felt like to have the FBI come in and use all their resources and to use everything they had to find her, to find their child. I didn't know what that felt like. They found her within 3 days. Day 30 is when I found out where my son was.
Carmen,
Now, I don't know if y'all heard that good. She said day 30. Day 30, I found out where my son was. Day 30. This is a sad story, a sad, sad story. And sadly, it ended the way that it did. It's sad that it even happened. And it's even more sadder that at this point, this mother does not have justice, because they're trying to make it seem like he harmed himself. This young man did not harm himself at all. So again, where it comes to both of these stories, I've been following with both of them. Gabby, I've been around the clock with that because I'm like, are they ever going to find this man? They're putting out all this effort to look for him, which I think he will be eventually found. I don't think he harmed himself because I feel like if he was going to do that, he would have did it after he killed her, or he would have did it the couple days he had to think about it before, you know, her parents started realizing that she was missing. So I think he's far too narcissistic to even harm himself. I think he's used to living basically on the go. I think he'll be able to blend into society very easily, and with support of his family, it could be forever, years, until he's found, unless he just slips up and does something really stupid, because people do get comfortable after a while. You never know if he had another girlfriend on the side somewhere, and we see these type of stories all the time. So I just wanted to talk about this and just shed some light into this story here, because it didn't get the coverage, and it needs to have the coverage because this mother needs justice for her son. Like I said, he wasn't out here just ripping and running the streets and in and out of prison and doing all kind of stuff like that. This was a educated, Black, intelligent young king gone far too soon. That's it, and that is all. You will see me or either hear me on my next video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, although it is sad, but I do want to come with, more quality content and also talk about things that actually make a difference. So enjoy the rest of your day, and you will see me later. Bye-bye.